Good morning. My name is Jayson Coil. I'm an operations section chief with Southwest Area Team 1. Today is July 18th, and this is your operational update on the Laguna fire. Last night we did get an infrared flight over the fire, and the fire was mapped at 16,004 acres. It's still 44% contained, and there are 324 personnel assigned. So while we did get an IR flight last night, there was some precipitation over parts of the fire, and there's also a lot of humidity in the air, kind of leftovers from that precipitation. So we do expect to see more infrared activity if we have a warm day today and we don't get any precipitation, because those conditions I just described can mask some of the less intense heat. Before I go to the map, I want to talk about what we're doing today and what we've done over the last couple of days to enhance decision quality. And when I talk about decision quality, it's not necessarily outcomes. While making higher quality decisions in complex environments increases the likelihood that we will have a higher quality outcome, it doesn't guarantee it, and we acknowledge that. But I thought I would just read y'all in a little bit to some of the things we're doing, and then I'll talk about how they apply specifically to the two areas of focus that we have right now for the fire. So the first one is that we work to try to we call decentralized decision making. So we push those decisions out to people in the field where they can react more quickly to the conditions as they change, and that they understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. We call that intent. And by doing that, then, and not having to wait for, asking mom or dad if you have permission, then they can respond more quickly and take advantage of small changes that either favorable or unfavorable conditions. The other one is that we avoid making decisions too early. Oftentimes that can come across as that we're being indecisive, and indecision certainly can be a problem. However, when I talk about multiple different, what we call courses of action or different alternatives we're considering, and then I say that we're not sure which one we're going to elect to use, it is not because I have a hard time making a decision. It's because making a decision too early can negatively impact the quality of that decision that we make. The other thing we do is we have a lot of structured processes for decision making. Back of the napkin or just intuitive decision making is prone to error when there's a lot of different variables that need to be considered, and then you miss important components that degrade the quality of the decision and can potentially impact the outcome. The other thing that we do is we make sure that we have clear communication channels and that we know who the information needs to go to and when they need to get it. That can be for ordering aircraft, that can be for making sure that we have alerts on the weather, all those things, because if we spend that time when we have the time, we call discretionary time, when you're not like out on the fire line, but you're preparing for the event, then you can reduce the time it takes to implement that when you're under pressure. And then we also develop a lot of contingencies, and I'll talk about those contingencies when we go to the map. So the primary plan is the primary plan as long as it has a high probability of success. Or if the consequence of failure is significant, we may keep something in the primary plan even when its probability of success isn't that high. It's because the consequence of failure is so high. But we'll talk about contingencies. And again, that's not indecision. It is preparing for the uncertainty that is inherent to the environment. And then finally, we'll red team the plan. And what that looks like for us is that we'll do things like a pre-mortem. We'll talk about if the plan failed, what would that failure look like in a catastrophic way, like the ultimate bad day. And then we talk about what the steps are that would lead up to that failure. And then we look at what we can do to influence those steps to make the failure less likely. So those are the different processes or the different components of decision quality. And again, decision quality is not decision outcome. But if you work to make sure you make high quality decisions, then when it comes to uncertainties in the environment, you're better able to adapt to them, and you will increase the likelihood that you have a good outcome. So let's go to the map, and we're going to start up in Division Alpha, And I got a little blow up here so we can see things a little better. All right, so up in Division Alpha, this is the area of particular concern to us. So this is the northern part of the fire. Actually, Joe, can we go back just one real quick, and I'll let people know where I'm bringing them to. So this is the area that we're going to zoom in on, is this area right up here on the northwest corner of the fire. So, all right, go back to Alpha. I took a couple different products and overlaid them. The red that you see with the hash marks coming off of it, that's the open fire's edge. And then this yellow blob, these little dots, and then this red blob right here, this is heat from last night's IR. This X is the dozer line that we put in 2 days ago, finished yesterday, and then I talked about that we were going to do this yesterday and it was completed, is this hand line that goes and ties up into this ridge. So this fire bumped the dozer line last night and it did not get across it. So big win. The goal, or the primary effort today, is going to be to take this hand line where the line is in on the ground, but opening up the fuels on both sides of it to make it where it has a higher probability of holding, and then working on a burn plan. So this little unburned island in here, and then the areas, and not all of this is, a lot of this is rock, but in the areas where the fire may continue to move all the way across until we get up here to the Rio Galena drainage. All of this is one of the areas that is going to be a primary focus for today. And the reason is that this fire right here, if we get outflow winds that push it, it has the opportunity to develop a head of steam. And if it does that and gets across our dozer line or this hand line here, then it's up here into fresh terrain and fresh fuel. We do still have our secondary control line around it like that, and then way beyond this map there is a third control line, but we want to keep it within the primary control line. So what that means is that we may be doing some firing off the inside of this dozer line in this pocket initially to close it up. And basically what that does for us is, instead of having a dozer line that's 15, 20 feet wide as a fire break, then if we remove the fuel closer to the main fire, it makes that line more solid, less likely to be breached. And it also prevents outflow winds from pushing the fire across the line, because it can't really get ahead of steam. The timing of that today is going to be critical, and so we're going to be watching the weather. We're going to be watching if there's thunderstorms that are starting to build up around us today like they're supposed to, and it may mean that we wait until the threat of those outflow winds has been diminished before we start doing the work in that area. So that is the primary effort in Alpha. And now we'll go back to the main map, and then we'll go to Mike so I can tell everybody where we're going. Thanks. So now we're going to go down into this area of Division Mike in the La Presa Canyon. All right. So this is the La Presa Canyon. There's the Rio de Chama up here to the northeast. And then, of course, the canyon going down here. This is the Indios fire, this blue hash mark. And then that's the edge of the fire from weeks ago that's out, or from several days ago that's out. Up here on the mesa, the fire has come off the mesa and into La Presa Canyon a little bit. You can see, just like in the other map, this yellow is where there is heat. That is moderate heat, and then the red is where there's intense heat. So all this is off onto very steep terrain. The actions that are going to take place today are, we've identified 4 different areas that have the potential for being able to be used as holding features. The primary one is coming off the rim about here, back down to a big rock slope down to the bottom. That is very steep country. We did some GIS work on it, and it's up to 68% slope. So, almost a 12-12 pitch on a roof, and so the crew, we're going to send in the division supervisor along with some hotshot crew overhead, and they're going to go in there. They're going to ground truth that. So, I can do my things with maps and with aerial pictures. We can fly around in helicopters, but we got to get on the ground and see if it's viable. That's what they're going to be evaluating today, is the viability of getting that where we tie in the fire's edge where it's up on top, and that we can secure the rest of it down to the bottom of this rock where it's not going to get past, and then using that rock feature going around below these areas of heat, and then back down to the scabbier fuels, we call it, where the less continuous fuels, all the way back down towards the 474 road. The goal is not to burn every bit of this, because as you can see, this big line here, that's another steep rock cliff. But the goal is to first and foremost prevent high-intensity fire from establishing in the top of La Presa. We already got some drainage or some runoff off of some of the drainages that come off of the Indios fire yesterday when they got some moderate rain over that. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to contribute more to the flooding potential and the impacts downstream by getting any high-intensity fire in here. So crews are going to go in there, do that scouting mission, and then concurrent with that, we're going to be working to improve our indirect lines down there towards the bottom and look for other opportunities to shrink the box, we call it, but to bring the lines in closer to the fire, especially as we get further north up here, kind of near where the Rio Galena and the Rio Chama come together, and look for areas to divide that out so we can say if there's intense heat here and there's nothing up further, that we can work on this part and secure that part where it's at. So that's what's going on today, is that combination of efforts primarily in those two areas. We'll still be patrolling the rest of the fire, and we will also still be working on some structure prep, preparing the values at risk, some of around the monastery and some other areas, and the road systems, just to reinforce those while that scouting mission is going on. And then if that ends up being a viable plan that we can put crews in, then we'll start working on that tomorrow. And the other part that I want to tell you is that we have a new asset today. Thanks to the state of New Mexico, we have a New Mexico National Guard Black Hawk helicopter, so a large helicopter, a military aircraft that has paramedics on it and is hoist capable. And why that's a big deal is the canopy height there is up to 100 feet. And our regular way of kind of using a person on a rope and going down and picking somebody up, their rope's 100 feet. You got to have more of a margin than that. So this Black Hawk has a winch that's 250 feet and has capability to fly in much more unfavorable weather conditions and winds and everything. So that asset is going to be flying around the fire, orienting themselves to the fire in the areas that we're going to be working. So if you see a military Black Hawk flying low over your house somewhere around the fire, it's probably ours. Thanks. And that ends today's operational update.